This episode is presented to you as an audiobook. So take a breath, slow down, and really listen. Every problem you face in life, anxiety, self-doubt, fear, frustration, can often be traced back to one simple cause. You care too much about what other people think of you, not your goals, not your values, not your happiness, their opinions. And that concern, that constant need for approval, quietly becomes the root of your unhappiness. Today, we're rediving deep into one powerful idea inspired by the courage to be disliked by Ichiro, Kishimi, and Fumitake, Koga, and more importantly, how to apply this philosophy to your own life. This is about learning how to live for yourself, not for others. The hidden source of most worry. We often believe our worries are personal, that they come from inside us, but the truth is far more uncomfortable. Almost every worry you have is connected to other people. How they see you, how they judge you, how they talk about you when you're not in the room. There is no such thing as worry that exists in isolation. Even when you think you're worried about yourself, the shadow of someone else is always there. Your boss, your parents, your friends, society. And because of that, life begins to feel complicated, overwhelming, exhausting. But according to Kishimi and Koga, life itself is not complex. We make it complex. And the one thing standing between you and peace is something very simple, yet very difficult: the courage to be disliked. Freedom has a price. Most people say they want freedom. Freedom to live how they want. Freedom to choose their own path. Freedom to be themselves. But very few are willing to pay the price, because freedom comes with a cost. And that cost is this: not everyone will like you. You don't lack confidence. You don't lack intelligence. You don't lack potential. What you lack is courage. The courage to accept disapproval. The courage to disappoint others. The courage to be misunderstood. And until you develop that courage, you will remain trapped, living a life designed by other people's expectations. Why happiness is a choice. One of the most powerful ideas in this philosophy is that everyone has the ability to be happy, regardless of their past. Not some people. Not lucky people. Everyone. The difference between happy and unhappy people is not talent, background, or trauma. It is their willingness to change. This idea comes from psychologist Alfred Adler, whose work deeply influenced this philosophy. Adler believed that the mind, body, emotions, and thoughts all move toward a single goal, even when you're not aware of it. Everything you do, how you think, how you feel, how you act, is moving you toward something, and that goal shapes who you become. You are not your personality. You are your choices. According to Adler, you don't have a fixed personality. You have a lifestyle, a pattern of habits, thoughts, emotions, and behaviors you chose, often unconsciously, because you believed it would help you reach a goal. Even traits like shyness, anger, or anxiety are not permanent identities. They are strategies. For example, someone who avoids social interaction isn't naturally antisocial. They may be choosing that behavior because it helps them avoid rejection or judgment. And this leads to a powerful realization: your emotions don't control your actions. Your goals create your emotions. The truth about fear and anxiety. Imagine someone who wants a better job. They have an interview coming up. But suddenly, they feel overwhelming anxiety. They procrastinate. They don't prepare. They might even cancel the interview. They believe the problem is fear. But according to this philosophy, the fear is not the problem. It is the tool. Their true goal is to avoid failure, and fear helps them do exactly that. If they never try, they never fail. And this is how many people unconsciously use emotions, not as enemies, but as excuses. You are not defined by your past. Many people believe their past trauma prevents them from being happy. But here's a hard truth. Trauma does not decide your future. The meaning you give it does. Two people can experience the same hardship. One grows stronger, the other remains stuck. Not because of what happened, but because of how they interpret it. Your past experiences do not determine your life. Only the meaning you attach to them does. From this moment forward, you are free to choose differently. Why some people choose unhappiness? If happiness is possible, Why do so many people stay unhappy? Because for some, unhappiness is a strategy, a way to avoid risk, a way to gain sympathy, a way to justify inaction. But most often, long-term unhappiness is tied to one thing: relationships. Specifically, what you are trying to get from others. There are two main goals people have in relationships: gaining approval, making a positive contribution. Unhappy people choose the first. Happy people choose the second. The trap of seeking approval. Approval feels good. Being praised feels good. Being liked feels good. But when approval becomes your goal, it becomes your prison. Because approval is always based on someone else's standards, you begin living by their rules, their values, their expectations, and in doing so, you slowly give up your freedom. If your happiness depends on praise, then your life is no longer yours. It belongs to whoever is judging you. And here's the cruel truth: you can never control whether people like you, no matter how hard you try. When approval becomes impossible. When people realize they can't earn approval, many do one of two things. They give up, or they convince themselves something is wrong with them. They tell themselves, "I'm broken, I'm flawed, I'm just not likable," and this belief protects them, because if they're defective, then they don't have to try. But this belief destroys them slowly, because it removes responsibility, and with it, hope. Why approval turns life into a competition. When approval is the goal, life becomes a contest. If someone else succeeds, you lose. If someone is praised, you feel threatened. You compare constantly, and comparison poisons relationships. You stop celebrating others. You start resenting them. This is why approval seeking prevents real connection. The alternative: contribution. Happy people don't live for approval. They live to be useful, not in a dramatic way, not to be praised, but because contributing gives them meaning. They don't ask, "Do they like me?" They ask, "Am I helping in my own way?" When you feel useful, recognition becomes unnecessary. You already know your value. Before we talk about helping others without expectation, we need to slow down and understand something important. Let's talk about why approval feels so necessary in the first place. From a very young age, most of us are trained to behave in exchange for rewards. If you're quiet, you're praised. If you obey, you're rewarded. If you perform well, you're recognized. And when you don't, approval is taken away. Over time, we begin to confuse being approved of with being worthy. We start to believe, if people like me, I must be good. If they don't, something must be wrong with me. This belief becomes so deeply ingrained that we stop questioning it. We carry it into adulthood, into relationships, into careers, into every decision we make. And without realizing it, we begin living our lives as performances, living as a performance. Think about how often you ask yourself questions like, how will this make me look? What will they think if I do this? Will I lose respect if I say no? These questions slowly replace more important ones. Questions like, what do I actually want? What feels meaningful to me? What kind of life do I want to live? When approval is your compass, you don't move forward, you adjust. You adapt your personality. You soften your opinions. You hide parts of yourself. And the more you do this, the more disconnected you feel from who you really are. Because deep down you know the truth. You read not being liked for who you are. You read being tolerated for who you pretend to be. Why people-pleasing leads to exhaustion. One of the most common symptoms of approval seeking is exhaustion. Not physical exhaustion, emotional exhaustion. And because people-pleasing has no finish line, there's always another expectation to meet, another standard to uphold, another version of yourself to maintain. And no matter how much you give, it never feels like enough. This is why many people feel burned out even when their lives look successful from the outside. They are constantly managing perceptions, and that kind of life slowly drains the soul. The fear beneath approval seeking. At the core of approval seeking is not kindness, it's fear. Fear of rejection, fear of conflict, fear of being alone. But here's what most people don't realize. Being disliked does not destroy relationships. Pretending destroys them. Real relationships can survive disagreement. They can survive honesty. They can survive disappointment. But they cannot survive inauthenticity. The difference between being kind and being approved of. There is a critical difference between kindness and approval seeking. Kindness comes from choice. Approval seeking comes from fear. A kind person helps because they want to. An approval seeker helps because they're afraid of losing value. One is free. The other is trapped. And the tragedy is that approval seeking often disguises itself as goodness. But goodness that depends on validation is fragile. The moment appreciation disappears, resentment appears. Why expectations poison relationships? When you live for approval, your actions come with invisible contracts. I did this for you, so you owe me. I supported you, so you should appreciate me. I sacrificed for you, so you shouldn't disappoint me. But when others don't fulfill those unspoken expectations, bitterness grows. This is how relationships turn cold. Not because people are ungrateful, but because the help was never free to begin with. The illusion of control. Many people believe that by pleasing others, they can control outcomes. Control how people feel. Control how they are treated. Control whether they are accepted. But this is an illusion. You can give everything to someone and still be misunderstood. You can be perfect and still be rejected. And this realization is painful, but also liberating. Because once you accept that you cannot control others' opinions, you can finally stop trying. The first step toward freedom doesn't begin with confidence. It begins with letting go of the need to manage how you're perceived, letting go of the fantasy that everyone must like you, letting go of the belief that approval equals worth. And when that weight is lifted, something changes. You stop asking, do they approve of me? And you start asking, am I living honestly? From approval to contribution, this is the turning point. When you stop chasing approval, a space opens up, a space where you can choose a different goal. Not being liked, not being praised, not being validated, but being useful in your own way. Not to earn love, but because contributing gives life meaning. And this is where everything begins to change. Helping others without expectation. True contribution is not sacrifice. It's not martyrdom. It's not doing things so others will owe you something. That's just another form of approval seeking. Real contribution comes from understanding this. Helping others makes you happy, and that's enough. You don't need applause for it to matter. You are valuable just by existing. You don't need to achieve something extraordinary to matter. You don't need to prove your worth. Your presence alone has value. Simply being there, listening, caring, existing, impacts others more than you realize. When you accept this, self-acceptance becomes possible, even with flaws, even with mistakes. Life is not a competition. Happy people don't fear others' success. They celebrate it because they don't measure their worth against others. They know someone else winning does not make them lose. And finally, happy people live in the present. They enjoy the process, not just the destination. So if life ended tomorrow, they wouldn't feel like it was wasted. Final message. No matter how you live, some people will dislike you. That is unavoidable. So the only real choice is this. Will you live according to their opinions or according to your own values? True happiness requires courage. The courage to let go of approval. The courage to accept rejection. The courage to live your life fully, honestly, and freely. Live for yourself, not for others.